In the bustling city of Ibadan, Nigeria, lives a man named Baba Segi, a wealthy, loud, and proud patriarch who boasts of his household, a polygamous family with 4 wives and 7 children. From the outside, Baba Segi's home seems like a portrait of traditional success, where a man's virility and wealth are measured by the number of women he controls and the children he produces. But beneath this seemingly robust household lies a tangled web of secrets, betrayals, and suppressed pain. Baba Segi, although materially comfortable, is a man driven by deep insecurity. His pride stems not from intellectual prowess or emotional intelligence, but from the number of children he believes he has fathered. To him, fatherhood validates his manhood. His first 3 wives, Iya Segi, Iya Tope, and Iya Femi, have all borne him children, further boosting his confidence. But his world begins to change when he marries Bolanle, a university graduate, a woman far more educated and refined than any other in his household. Bolanle's arrival is met with immediate tension. The other wives see her as a threat, not because of her beauty, but because of her education and the dignity she carries. Iya Segi, the first wife, is the unofficial matriarch of a house. She's shrewd, calculating, and protective of her influence. She immediately senses that Bolanle's presence could unravel the delicate balance she has maintained for years. Iya Tope, the second wife, is the most submissive and gentle of the wives. She tends to avoid confrontation and follows Iya Segi's lead. The third wife, Iya Femi, is bitter and vengeful, scarred by her traumatic past and eager to protect her position by any means necessary. Bolanle, on the other hand, is emotionally broken. She carries the weight of a traumatic experience from her past, a sexual assault that left her ashamed and withdrawn from her family. Marrying Baba Segi was, for her, an escape from her past and an opportunity to find peace. But she quickly learns that life in a polygamous household is anything but peaceful. The women refuse to warm up to her. They exclude her from conversations, mock her silence, and interpret her dignity as arrogance. As the days turn into weeks, Bolanle fails to conceive, and this becomes the catalyst for chaos. Baba Segi, unable to understand the delay, begins to worry. In his mind, any delay in conception must be the woman's fault. Pressured by tradition and superstition, he takes Bolanle to hospitals and doctors, hoping to cure her infertility. But the test results reveal a shocking truth. Baba Segi is sterile. He has never been able to father children. This revelation, however, is unknown to him. The doctor insists on speaking to Bolanle alone and advises her to prepare for a difficult choice. Expose the truth or keep quiet to preserve the family's dignity. Bolanle is torn. On one hand, she feels betrayed and humiliated by the pressure placed on her for something that was never her fault. On the other hand, she fears the fallout of revealing such a truth in a deeply patriarchal and polygamous household. Meanwhile, the other wives sense that something is wrong. Iya Segi, ever watchful and suspicious, believes Bolanle is planning something. She gathers the other wives, and they begin to scheme. Iya Segi sees Bolanle's potential to destroy everything they've built, their lies, their secrets, and their power. And so, they decide that Bolanle must be eliminated, not through violence, but through sabotage. The wives begin to manipulate events around the house, isolating Bolanle and poisoning Baba Segi's mind against her. They imply that her presence is cursed, that she is bringing misfortune to the household. Baba Segi, increasingly frustrated and embarrassed by her barrenness, starts to withdraw from Bolanle emotionally. The more he tries to assert dominance, the more Bolanle grows disillusioned. In flashbacks, we begin to learn the backstories of each wife. Iya Segi's journey is particularly revealing. As a young woman, she was clever and hungry for control. When she married Baba Segi, she quickly realized he was easy to manipulate. When she could not conceive, she secretly found another man and passed the resulting children off as Baba Segi's. It was the beginning of a tradition that the other wives would later follow. Iya Tope, too, was unable to conceive initially, and under pressure, she confided in Iya Segi. Instead of judging her, Iya Segi offered a solution, the same one she had used. Reluctantly, Iya Tope bore children for Baba Segi through the same deceit. Iya Femi, with a darker past marked by abuse and exploitation, was equally desperate for security. She, too, joined a web of lies, all ensuring Baba Segi remained oblivious to the truth of his supposed fatherhood. The wives had created a system that worked until Bolanle arrived. Her education, composure, and infertility all threatened to reveal the one truth that could destroy the entire household. None of Baba Segi's children are biologically his. The weight of these secrets becomes unbearable for Bolanle. She is caught in a house that resents her, married to a man who cannot father children, and tormented by a past she hasn't fully healed from. As the pressure mounts, she begins to question everything: her marriage, her choices, and her own worth. But Bolanle is not a passive character. Beneath her quiet demeanor is a woman determined to live with dignity. The more she is pushed, the more she starts to reflect on her next steps. Should she expose the truth and destroy the household? Should she continue to live in silence? Or should she leave and reclaim her own identity? As Baba Segi becomes more desperate, his insistence on uncovering the source of Bolanle's barrenness drives him to more doctors and tests that could finally unmask the truth. The house is on the brink of collapse, and Bolanle stands at the center of the storm, unsure of which direction to turn. As Baba Segi's frustration with Bolanle's supposed infertility grows, he becomes increasingly erratic. He visits different doctors and traditional healers, seeking answers and even accusing Bolanle of hiding something from him. What he does not know is that the real secret isn't about Bolanle at all. It's about himself. The truth, hidden by all three of his older wives for years, is that he has never fathered any of the children he proudly calls his own. Bolanle, having learned this from the doctor, carries the secret alone. The burden is heavy, but so is the risk of revealing it. She is not sure how to proceed. If she tells Baba Segi the truth, it will humiliate him. If she keeps silent, the other wives may succeed in ruining her. In this fragile and hostile environment, Bolanle begins to regain her strength. She starts keeping a journal, reflecting on her life, her trauma, and the choices that brought her into this dysfunctional household. Meanwhile, the wives sense the change in her. Bolanle is no longer the timid, defeated woman they thought they could silence. She walks with more purpose, speaks less, but listens more. Iya Segi, ever manipulative and sharp, feels the pressure. She's the ringleader of the household, and she prides herself on maintaining control. But now, Bolanle's refusal to crumble under pressure unsettles her. Aya Segi intensifies her scheming. She encourages Ayafemi, the most volatile of the wives, to act against Bolanle more aggressively. Ayafemi, with her painful past and deep resentment, becomes the willing tool. She decides to poison Bolanle by lacing her food. However, the plan goes horribly wrong. The poisoned food is mistakenly eaten by one of Baba Segi's children, resulting in a tragic death. The entire house is thrown into chaos. Baba Segi is devastated, and for the first time, he begins to sense that something deeper and more dangerous is happening in his household. Authorities are involved and investigations begin. The police demand answers, and the wives are terrified. What was meant to be a discreet plan to remove Bolanle has now exposed their cruelty and recklessness. Bolanle is questioned, but she remains calm. Her intelligence and poise make a strong impression on the investigators. The poisoning incident becomes a turning point. The police insist on medical tests for the family, and under pressure, Baba Segi reluctantly agrees. What follows is the complete unraveling of the family's foundation. The DNA tests confirm what Bolanle and the doctors already knew. Baba Segi is sterile. Not one of the children in the household is biologically his. The truth hits Baba Segi like a thunderclap. Everything he believed about himself as a father, a husband, is shattered in an instant. He is humiliated, enraged, and confused. The wives, cornered, each try to defend themselves. But the truth cannot be silenced any longer. Aya Segi finally admits that she was the first to commit the deception. Desperate to remain in the marriage and avoid shame, she had taken a lover and passed off the children as Baba Segi's. When Iya Tope and Iya Femi faced similar struggles, she guided them down the same path. They had created a system built on lies, but in their own twisted way, it was also a survival mechanism in a society that measured a woman's worth by her ability to bear children. Baba Segi is devastated not just by the betrayal, but by the realization that he never truly knew the women he lived with. The betrayal is too deep for forgiveness. The household that once echoed with the noise of children, wives, and pride is now heavy with silence and disgrace. Amid the wreckage, Bolanle makes her choice. She decides to leave. The chaos has finally broken the spell that once kept her in place. For too long, she had used marriage to escape her own past, to forget the pain of her assault, the shame she felt, and the feeling of being an outsider in her own family. But now, Bolanle chooses freedom, not just from Baba Segi, but from the guilt, the secrets, and the expectations placed on her as a woman. Her departure is not one of anger, but of liberation. She walks away with dignity, knowing she did not need to destroy others to find her peace. She had survived the worst, held her truth, and reclaimed her voice. As Bolanle steps out of Baba Segi's house for the last time, the wives are left to reckon with the fallout. Aya Segi is consumed with bitterness, blaming Bolanle for everything, even though she knows deep down that the truth would have come out eventually. Iya Tope, always the most passive, is broken by guilt and sorrow. Iya Femi becomes withdrawn, haunted by the role she played in the child's death and the ultimate collapse of the family. And Baba Segi, once loud, boastful, and confident, sits in stunned silence. He is a man stripped of illusions, forced to confront his failures, yet even in his pain, there's a chance for growth. Whether he chooses it or not is left open. But the seed of change has been planted. Back in her own world, Bolanle returns to her mother, who had once disapproved of her decision to marry an older man with multiple wives. She starts piecing her life together again, this time on her own terms, no longer defined by trauma or by her role as someone's wife. Bolanle embraces her identity as a survivor, a woman of strength, and a woman of choice. After Bolanle walks away from Baba Segi's home, she embarks on a journey, not just away from polygamy, but toward self-discovery and healing. For years, she had silenced her own pain to fit into a mold. First, the obedient daughter, then the submissive wife. Now, freed from the suffocating expectations of others, she begins to write her own story. Her return to her mother's house is quiet and reflective. Her mother, once harsh and judgmental, has softened with time. The strained relationship between them begins to heal, slowly but surely. Bolanle's time in Baba Segi's household has changed her. It has made her stronger, more aware, and more determined to never live on someone else's terms again. She begins teaching, sharing her knowledge with young girls, particularly those from disadvantaged backgrounds. Her past trauma and recent experiences give her a unique voice, one that resonates deeply with young women who've been silenced, abused, or overlooked. Through her work, Bolanle starts to transform her pain into purpose. Meanwhile, in Baba Segi's household, the fallout from the revelations has left everyone in ruins. The once noisy, bustling compound is now eerily quiet. The trust that once held the family together, though built on lies, has been completely shattered. Baba Segi, once bursting with pride, now spends his days in confusion and shame. The truth of his sterility gnaws at him. For years, he defined himself by his manhood, measured through his children and wives. Now, with that illusion gone, he feels emasculated and betrayed. His once boisterous personality dims. He avoids his neighbors, recoils from the community he used to boast to, and isolates himself. But even in his grief, Baba Segi is forced to reckon with reality. He begins to see his wives not just as traitors, but as victims of a society that left them little choice. Though he struggles with forgiveness, he begins to reflect on his own role in the dysfunction. His demand for children, his emotional neglect, and his unwillingness to listen had created a prison for the women he claimed to love. Each of the wives responds to the downfall in their own way. Iya Segi, the once dominant queen of the household, clings to her pride. Though exposed, she still tries to assert control, but her influence has waned. She lashes out, blaming Bolanle, blaming fate, blaming everyone but herself. Deep down, she's haunted by fear. Without her status in the home, what is she? A woman with no job, no husband's favor, and now no secrets left to manipulate. Her world is shrinking, and bitterness consumes her. Iya Tope, the gentle and soft-spoken wife, is devastated. The scandal has broken her spirit. She feels ashamed of her past decisions, of the way she allowed herself to be led, even into deceit. But she is also quietly relieved. The truth, painful as it is, has set her free from years of guilt. For the first time, she begins to consider what she wants from life rather than simply what others expect of her. Femi, the youngest and most volatile of the wives, becomes a shadow of her former self. The death of the child who consumed the poisoned food haunts her. The guilt, heavier than any punishment the law could bring, becomes her prison. She mourns not only the child, but also the life she could have had if trauma had not driven her toward vengeance and deceit. Her silence becomes her way of coping. As for the children, they remain innocent victims. Though not biologically Baba Segi's, they are still products of love, pain, and survival. Baba Segi, despite his anger and betrayal, finds it difficult to cast them aside. Over time, he begins to rebuild his relationship with them, not as their biological father, but as the man who raised them. He begins to understand that love, not biology, makes a family. In quiet moments, Baba Segi begins journaling, an act inspired by Bolanle. He starts writing down his thoughts, his memories, and even his regrets. It's a slow, awkward process, but it begins to help him heal. He starts seeing his past not as a point of pride, but as a series of lessons. For the first time, he listens, not to boast or to dominate, but to understand. The wider community, of course, has its own reaction. News of the scandal spreads quickly, and Baba Segi's household becomes the subject of gossip. But time has a way of dulling even the sharpest of scandals. Eventually, people move on and the family is left to pick up the pieces in private. Back in Bolanle's world, a different kind of rebuilding is happening. She begins to speak publicly about women's issues, particularly focusing on child marriage, education, and sexual abuse. Her voice grows stronger, her platform wider. She shares her story, not for sympathy, but as a call to action. She becomes an advocate, a mentor, and a source of inspiration. One day, she receives a letter from Iya Tope. It's a quiet, heartfelt message, an apology, and a thank you. Iya Tope tells her that she is grateful Bolanle came into their lives, even if her arrival caused everything to fall apart. Because, in the end, the truth needed to be exposed, and the lies needed to be confronted. This moment of connection brings closure to Bolanle. She realizes that her time in Baba Segi's house, as painful as it was a necessary chapter in her life. She didn't go there to save anyone. She didn't go there to destroy anyone. She simply showed up and refused to be broken. And that quiet strength changed everything.